I'm Todd Forrest, Arthur Ross Vice President for Horticulture and Living Collections at the New York Botanical Garden. Early spring's daffodils and flowering trees were breathtaking and left us wondering if late spring could possibly compare. April's unusually cool weather extended into May, and we were treated with a captivating continuation of spring's delights. The lilacs, tree peonies, and azaleas have been in top form. In the perennial garden, seasonal walk, and native plant garden have been lush and beautiful. It has been a spring to remember at NYBG. Flowering dogwoods, a personal favorite, are native to our site and grace nearly every corner of the garden, from the Thane family forest to the azalea garden. To the Ross conifer arboretum. The unfolding of their petal-like bracts marks the transition from early to late spring. In the 1930s, there are more flowering dogwoods at NYBG than any other type of tree, and some gnarled old specimens still flower reliably every year. We've been adding disease-resistant flowering dogwood cultivars with the goal of having those unmistakable flower bracts visible from anywhere in the garden, like arboreal sirens summoning us across the spring landscape. If early spring is the time of bulbs and flowering trees, late spring is when some of our most dramatic display gardens begin to shine. The Jane Watson Irwin Perennial Garden is designed by NYBG trustee Lyndon Miller to provide 4 seasons of beauty. A fitting companion to the landmark Enid Haupt Conservatory. Lyndon divided the perennial garden into a series of outdoor garden rooms, each with a distinct color scheme and personality. Bulbs provide much of the early color, starting with the minor bulbs, moving on through the narcissus, and ending in May with tulips and alliums. Carefully clipped small trees, boxwoods, and yews define the spaces and complement the soft beauty of the spring flowers. Designed by legendary Dutch garden designer Piet Oudolf, the Marjorie G. Rosen Seasonal Walk is a jewel within the garden's landscape. Oudolf created a long double border entirely of herbaceous plants. In May, bulbs give way to a delightful mix of early flowering perennials, including spurge, blue sage, geum, columbine, and threadleaf blue star. True to its name, Seasonal Walk unfolds over the gardening year with something to celebrate from March into December. Gardeners across New England, New York, and the Mid-Atlantic have planted lilacs in dooryards, along stone walls, and in garden beds for more than 2 centuries. Cherished for the intoxicating scent of their flowers and their cold hardiness, lilacs remain sentimental favorites from Canada to Virginia. The Byrne family lilac collection features nearly 500 lilacs representing more than 130 different varieties. Planted along the slopes of a valley just north of the Peggy Rockefeller Rose Garden, the lilac collection is a world unto itself in spring. April is kind to lilacs at NYBG. It is when Syringa X hyacinthiflora lilacs begin flowering, usually starting in the middle of the month. Disease-resistant and tolerant of warm summers, hyacinthiflora cultivars are the best lilacs for our climate. When sourcing plants for the restoration of the collection, curator Deanna Curtis scoured the country for new and unusual hyacinthifloras. If there was already a lilac in your garden when you moved in, it is most likely common lilac, Syringa vulgaris. These have been the most popular lilacs in gardens for centuries. The Byrne family lilac collection is usually in peak bloom in early May when the French hybrid lilacs and other common lilac cultivars flower. On a warm, still spring day, the scent of the lilacs carries across the garden and draws us in. When we arrive, we wander along the paths, sticking our noses into each plant we encounter. Some flowers have a powerfully sweet scent. Others are spicy. And others have only the faintest perfume. Each of us has our favorites, but lilacs reward all who take the time to slow down and breathe deeply. Tree peonies are a wonder of the plant world. Unlike herbaceous peonies, which die back to the ground over the winter, tree peonies are shrubs with woody stems that persist year to year. In China, there are tree peonies that are more than 300 years old. We established our Dolores Defina Hope tree peony collection in 2000 with a group of Chinese tree peony cultivars we had grown for an exhibition in the conservatory. These peonies have the most evocative names: gosling yellow, necklace with precious pearls, lotus that shines in the sun, and black dragon holds a splendid flower, to name just a few. Whatever their names, tree peonies command attention in early May when the huge buds on these plants swell to reveal flowers that can be almost 10 inches across. The tree peony display is intense but fleeting. The best years are when it's cool and overcast during the roughly 2-week flowering period in early May. In China, gardeners place umbrellas over the flowering tree peonies to protect the flowers from intense sun or driving rain. Buying even a few extra days of these unlikely and remarkable blooms seems worth the most Herculean effort. The Marine K. Chilton Azalea Garden is horticultural heaven. The high canopy of ancient tulip trees, elms, oaks, sweet gums, and other native shade trees provides the perfect growing conditions for azaleas and closely related rhododendrons. Bedrock outcroppings, softened and sculptured by glaciers, create dramatic planting pockets for nearly 3,000 azaleas and rhododendrons. With more than 350 different varieties, there is a member of the genus Rhododendron in flower in the azalea garden from March into November. The garden reaches peak bloom around Mother's Day, when the coral, fuchsia, pink, lavender, and white hues of azaleas are so bright you swear you can see them from the moon. The greatest concentration of azaleas is planted along a gentle, south-facing slope in the middle of the garden. We planted the azaleas in bands that run along the slope, creating waves of color that seem to roll from the top of the site to the bottom. We call the clearing at the top of the azalea garden the Summit Meadow. It was inspired by the sunny meadows found above the tree line in the Appalachian Mountains. Sun-tolerant azaleas and rhododendrons thrive here. When they flower, they entice visitors to an overlook where they are rewarded with long vistas of the surrounding garden. Azaleas and rhododendrons aren't the whole story. The high shade of the azalea garden also provides hellebores, hostas, epimediums, sedges, ferns, and other woodland herbaceous plants exactly what they need to thrive. After spring's riot has passed and summer's heat mounts, these woodland wonders reward anyone who sets out for a slow stroll in the cool shade of the azalea garden. The native plant garden showcases the beauty and diversity of the plants that define the character of northeastern North America and celebrates NYBG's long history of scientific engagement with our regional flora. The garden's commitment to the study, conservation, and display of our native plants began with its founders, Nathaniel and Elizabeth Knight Britton. The Native Plant Garden is a tribute to Elizabeth Britton's pioneering work in the conservation of native wildflowers. The 3.5-acre Native Plant Garden nestles into a valley at the edge of the Thane family forest. It packs many habitats into a relatively small space: forest, water, ledge, and meadow. These habitats support an incredible diversity of native species, from stately birches to sun-baked cacti to demure trilliums. When it opened in 2013, the Native Plant Garden was an instant hit amongst the birds, mammals, amphibians, and insects that call NYBG home. All of its plants, from the mightiest oak to the most modest rush, provide food or shelter for the wildlife that descends upon the garden in spring. Modern in its design and in its mission, we created the Native Plant Garden to inspire gardeners to think seriously about growing native plants in their own gardens, so that together we can celebrate and preserve the increasingly imperiled plant and animal biodiversity of our region. For all of its serious purpose, the Native Plant Garden is, at its heart, simply a place to engage the senses and fall in love with the energy and mystery of nature. The herbaceous peonies and roses are starting to flower now, marking the beginning of the end of spring at NYBG. It has been such a long and beautiful spring this year. We have so missed having visitors here to join us as we have rejoiced in the incomparable beauty of the garden in April and May. We hope that these videos have kept the garden alive in your hearts and whetted your appetite for summer. Thank you for joining us on this journey through spring and for all that you do to help us take care of this amazing place.